Scheduled public meeting of September 17, 2018 of the Township of Washington Township Council. Adequate notice of the meeting was given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by the Township Clerk to at least 2 newspapers in January, and this notice has been posted on the Township Bulletin Board and on the Township website. Please notify the Township Clerk for any disability requirements necessary for attendance at Mayor and Council meetings. Fire exits are located through the double doors to your right and through the door on your left. Please silence all cell phones. Would everybody please rise for salute to the flag? Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Councilman Bruno?
Here.
Councilman Casio?
Here.
Councilman Cumming?
Here.
Councilman Ullman?
Here.
Council President DeSena?
Here. Approval of minutes, July 2nd, 2018, public meeting minutes. July 2nd, 2018, conference meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Cumming?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. This time, do I have a motion to open the meeting to the public?
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Cumming?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. Would anybody like to come up and address the council at this time? Seeing nobody, do I have a motion to close to the public discussion?
Motion.
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Cumming?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. This time, Tom from Quest Environmental and Engineering Services will present the findings of the well testing that was performed. Good evening, Mr. Foster.
So I guess I'll start, way back at the beginning. This is a discharge from 1998. The DEP has it as, we're focusing on it as AOC1. It was 3,000 gallon and a 2,000 gallon gasoline tank and a 3,000 gallon diesel immediately in front of the DPW building.
Can you pull, can you just pull the mic closer to you? They can't hear you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Is this better?
I'm waiting for my, yes, you're good.
Okay. One of the fittings on one of the gasoline tanks leaked, contaminated both soils and groundwater. At around the same time, they pulled a 1,000-gallon heating oil tank that fed the municipal building. It was located underneath where the cell tower is now, approximately. And then there's an additional AOC of note, and that's a former waste oil tank. And that is approximately where the current waste oil tank is in the DPW yard. So there was an excavation apparently conducted back in the day, and they did not remove all the soil contamination. So our historic work and our recent work indicate that soil contamination still exists in front of the DPW building and extends at a minimum 10 feet under the building.
Excuse me, when you say front, are you referring to the parking lot
The
or
parking
the?
lot, the parking lot side.
Okay, thank you.
I think the dispenser was sort of off the corner, off the far corner.
That's the west side of the building?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Right, real good.
So that remains one of the problems, and that is acting as a source of the groundwater. The groundwater contamination at one point probably extended under PASCAC, but given the amount of time, it's sort of reduced itself, and we consider it to be exclusively on site as far as exceedances go.
Sorry, exceedances off sites have naturally attenuated, you believe?
Yes. So our most recent report that went in was about getting you guys up to date with DEP deadlines. They have an RI requirement and they have an RA requirement. The RI is the remedial investigation. You have to say, this is the size of the contamination, this is where it's located, this is how much there is. And then the RA is the remedial action, that's the cleanup. They have that as a 5/2021 date for the deadline.
What does that date mean? That it has to be remediated, or,
Yes.
so 5?
Their intention is for our jobs with this sort of discharge number to be done by then, yeah.
So May 21st, 2021, it has to appear as it never existed.
With one caveat. So the remedial action could include a CEA, and for your site, likely would for the groundwater. And so that means there would be ongoing monitoring. A CEA just puts it in place, it's a restricted area. So nobody could put a portable well in the area that I or your consultant defines. And then you would just monitor it, and eventually it'll attenuate, and then eventually you could close that. There is no mechanism like that for soils. So ultimately, it would be good if the soils were out by that date or treated.
But Tom, just to stop, if we would have done this when the DEP originally asked us to do this, we would have had different criteria to meet, correct?
Oh, yeah. They dropped the benzene standard, which you guys have, from 1 to 0.005.
So if the past administrations would have dealt with this when they were supposed to, we may have gotten a no further action letter already and been done with this.
I mean, if things went well. You might be still in CEA monitoring.
But we wouldn't be talking about spending $200,000 to dig up this soil.
No.
Thank you.
I mean, the soil's clean, it's done.
Okay. Just wanted to put that out on the record.
You guys have an enormous amount of groundwater data, so establishing CEA at this point would not be.
It's not feasible.
But establishing CEA is totally feasible. We have a ton of data. The problem is you can't submit it and get approval if you still have source contamination.
Which is the soil.
Which is this one. So that's sort of the big one. And then to a smaller extent, there was a problem with the waste oil. There's one well immediately adjacent to it and has very sporadic cadmium hits, probably from a battery that leaked. There was a small soil excavation done. My guess is they didn't get it all. This is PMK back in early 2000s, maybe, somewhere in there.
This all started in 1998, correct?
Yes, that's when they would have found it. I don't know that the AST contamination was found that early because nobody was looking for it. Once you get the DEP involved, they tend to make it look for everything. So yeah, you guys have the proposal. I know that you're talking about maybe removing the DPW building. On my end, digging a hole in an open area is the easiest way to get rid of soil contamination. There are alternatives, and they are generally more expensive. Like if you want to keep the building and try to treat it in place, it's possible. I think the deadline would be tight at this point. Like I said, it is possible.
How deep is the contamination? What grading are we with the contamination?
Well, we would probably dig to groundwater. That's generally where I have samples as deep as 18.5 feet they're contaminated.
So we're driving sheeting to dig this out.
More than likely.
I'm sorry?
I mean, depending on what the redevelopment plan looks like. You know, if the building does go and the fencing does go, you know, you can slope sides and you can maybe get away with.
Don't forget, we're dealing with a slope going down also, so.
Certainly.
So, Mr. DeSena, can you explain that question, because it's not clear to
So
me.
we're talking about digging an 18.5-foot deep hole, probably the size of where the garbage trucks sit and the parking area next to it. I was a gambling man, which I'm not.
It's difficult to speculate the exact.
But it's going to be
I'd guess 40 by 40 would be a good start.
the garbage trucks and the 2 bays, 40 by 40 hole, 18.5 feet deep. In order to dig a 40-foot by 40-foot hole, 18.5 foot deep, we'll have to drive steel sheets to make a, barrier so the surrounding areas don't collapse. Now, is that included in the $170,000 budget, or is that just to remove and get rid of the soil?
Again, that cost estimate has some caveats because, if you decide not to demo the building.
So that's assuming you have a blank.
That's assuming that we can go and do without.
So our costs are, okay, so those costs in that proposal are not what we have out there today.
I'd say they were close, depending on, again, how much access.
No, I'm saying if we leave the building there, those costs aren't accurate.
Oh, no, not through the building. We've done it in the past where you dig down and you drive piles to support the building. I don't know if a building's that age.
That's what I'm saying.
How well that turns out. That would, you start to get.
I'm not suggesting, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the costs are.
With building demo, yes.
Prior administrations have left us a big liability, and it's a shame. I'll stop there before I get in trouble.
Mike, can I ask a question? Assuming we spend the money that's in this proposal and that building is gone and you have the area to work with, does that finish us, or is there more money to be spent down the line after this would be done?
So, assuming, let's say the soil goes well, you know, and it's digging, so eventually it does.
Right.
And, you know, we get it all in the first try and this cost is close. After which, we would do a small amount of groundwater monitoring, and then we could apply it for a CEA. So you're looking at a few thousand in reporting, a few thousand in sampling, and then if the DEP accepts it, there's an annual fee. I looked at it earlier today. I think it's $400,
Okay.
which is a lot nicer than for the open AOC fees, because you guys are probably paying something on the order of $2,000 a year for annual fees.
Okay. And Mike, maybe this is a question more for you than Tom. If we took that building down, how long do you need to remediate it before we would think about doing anything on that, or is that too broad a question?
It depends on if you want to pay for accelerated turns on samples. I mean, I can get sample results in as short as 24 hours if need be. I'm thinking a week for work, depending on, again, if we have to do sheet piles and what kind of situation we get into there.
Okay.
Weeks worth of work, and then
Okay, so you're not talking months or years?
No, you are talking months, probably 2 months.
months of preparation. I don't know that we'd be out here.
Okay, okay.
We wouldn't be digging for 2 months.
Oh, okay.
No, but by the time you start to finish,
Yes.
you're not going to be,
Yeah.
you're not done in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I wouldn't
okay.
want to squeeze this in if you had a
Okay.
deadline for starting and
I would,
building.
just that, 6 months would be safe?
No,
from-
I think that's way too long. I think if
Oh,
you set
well, I
a
said
1 to
safe,
3 month,
yeah.
a 1 to 3 month timeline.
Right, okay.
As long as Mother Nature
Yes,
cooperates and all
right.
that,
Okay.
Which
isn't
has
too
been rough on this year.
correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you both.
So for the waste oil tank, what we were leaning towards, and I think is the best approach, is to just, if we're out there digging, dig the well out and that whole area and get whatever little cadmium that might be just infiltrating into the thing and put a new well in it and put that to bed.
So where is that well located now in regards to
It's
our
immediately
45?
it's immediately next to the waste oil tank.
So, okay.
Is that the cube? Is that the waste
Yes.
oil cube?
Yes.
Okay. And are there any constraints or restrictions on what can be done at that site once it's remediated?
No, you guys will be fine. The only thing is, if you were going to build a building, we would probably want to be in touch with whoever's going to build it, so that we had, as we backfill to the specifications that they need to build a building. Like I can dump 3/4 clean into a hole, but it's not the best scenario to build a building on top of.
Because there's a hole there. If we're thinking about doing anything at that location, you have a basement level, so you don't have to build up. Perhaps you put a basement under rather than going on top.
It's a thought.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's sort of the long and the short of it. The cell tower area is ready for closure. The only reason we didn't close it, it's under the same discharge number as the tanks. So that's sort of funny with the DEP, like you can't half close a discharge number. And then we would close the waste oil tank under the same number.
What is the effect of the 40 by 40 by 18-foot excavation in such close proximity to the cell towers and their footings?
We're more than far enough away from the cell tower.
You are.
Yeah, I mean, unless the contamination goes much further than I anticipate. But I do have samples in between DBW and the cell tower that are clean, so.
That's 'cause of it.
So this remediation plan can't be put into play until the town makes a decision on what we're doing with that site.
This particular, like the digging approach, relies exclusively on the removal of the building in advance.
Okay.
It's a $250,000 liability, Mr. Holman, no matter how you dice it, without the demolition of the existing DMF building.
I apologize, you don't call it a DPW building.
It's okay.
All my other clients do.
We're the only town in the world that calls it a DMF. I don't know why.
We gotta change that someday.
Yes.
Yes.
Tomorrow would be good.
Yes.
Do we have any intermediate
New Year's party.
expenses related to this before we execute around this proposal?
The only thing that I would have is if the DEP does not like the non-remedial CEA I submitted with this most recent report. So they have done a great job of clarifying the difference. But in order to submit the RI, you have to protect people from the contaminated groundwater. So they require that you do a non-permitted CEA so that no one puts a well in. And then once you're done, you get a permitted CEA. They should make up a different name, but they haven't. So recently, I've had a few come back where they didn't like the mapping, but you're looking at a few hours of my time. It's nothing beyond that.
And any wells that we would need to monitor exist? So-
Yes.
With the exception of the one with the cadmium that you're going to rip out and have to replace?
So if there was going to be construction in that area, it's probably going to turn out to be best to remove all of the wells in advance, as opposed to destroying them in the process and then put them back in after the work is finished. So that would be 3 wells that would get probably removed during
At
demo.
about $15,000 a well?
15,000 total,
5,000 a well? Okay.
give or take. Yeah. It's only 1 deep well, so the shallower ones are a little more cost effective. It's when you get deep that gets problematic.
So by the time we take this proposal and add that kind of stuff to it,
That proposal should have a well task in it.
it has monitor well reinstallation.
Yep. And I think abandonment as well as
Yep.
task 2.
Any other questions, gentlemen?
Is there any of this that requires a long lead time before we would be ready to demolish the building and start the actual work on these tasks? It doesn't look like it, but I just want to
No,
make sure.
I got my guys out on a week's notice
Okay.
to abandon a well.
Yep. Okay.
I think the longest lead time is explaining to our taxpayers that we have to find $200,000 for something that should have been done 20 years ago. I don't think it's fair to this council to have to deal with this in 2018. It's a disgrace. It's not your fault, Mr. Foster.
Yeah, I mean, the DEP played some role early on in their ability to get stuff done. But
And our non-action to the DEPs was causing this now, so it's a disgrace that our non-action from, threat letters got to this point, and that's not fair to this council, to everybody sitting on this dais. It's not.
And to the taxpayers.
It's the taxpayers ultimately.
We'll figure it out somehow.
Yes.
Yep.
It's got to be done by 2021.
21.
It's plenty of time.
Just like it was in 1998 when it
Plenty
started,
of
Mr.
time. Oh,
Cassia.
yeah, plenty of time. Sure.
Anything else for Mr. Foster, gentlemen?
No, thank you.
You good, Mr. Bruno? Yep. Mr. Cumming?
I am,
Mr. Holman?
as good as I can be under the circumstances.
I guess the one question I have, in terms of the current use of the building and staff that are there on a regular basis, is this essentially capped because of the asphalt and the cement? I mean, is there,
I'd agree to essentially. So we did vapor testing in the municipal building as required by the DEP back in 2012-ish. We did not do it in the DPW building because, so what you would do initially is take a sub-slab sample and run it, and presumably in that probably be hot. If I had to guess, it would be hot. And then the next step for the DEP is to run an indoor air sample in the DPW building where they have cans of gasoline and they're actively working on equipment. So you can imagine how that would result. So,
okay.
You're getting a positive negative, right?
Positively.
Yeah, so they're not exposed to anything worse than they're already seeing from what's under the building.
Okay. Thank you.
It'd be much too expensive to inject some kind of bacteria to eat up these,
That form of in situ is not great for
This product?
for soil,
Okay.
for dry soil. If you were going to try to do the soil in place without demoing the building, you'd have to do like a vapor recovery system where you'd be like, forcibly pulling air from the ground and stripping the vapors from the soil that way. Again, the trailer set up and cutting floors for pipes, and then it would be more sampling.
and
It's
more expensive also.
easily more expensive.
Okay. Anything else, Dr. Casio?
No, I think it was well explained. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster, for your time driving up here in this crazy weather.
You got it. And if you have a follow-up question, I'm available, so you can get a hold of me. I'm always around.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on our agenda, ordinances under adoption, second reading. Ordinance number 18-11, an ordinance setting forth limitations of driveway area and providing for parking thereon.
Yeah, go ahead.
Resolution number 18-303, authorizing second reading and opening a public hearing for ordinance 1811. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Cumming?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. Would anybody like to discuss resolution number 18, ordinance number 18-11? Seeing nobody, do I have a motion to close hearing for ordinance 18-11?
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Cumming?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. Any discussion, gentlemen? Motion to adopt ordinance number 18-11 at second reading by title. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Cumming?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
No.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. An ordinance adopting ordinance number 18-13, an ordinance adopting a codification and revision of the ordinances of the Township of Washington, County of Bergen, State of New Jersey, providing for the maintenance of said code, repealing and saving from repeal certain ordinances not included therein, establishing a penalty for altering or tampering with the code, and making certain changes in previously adopted ordinances. Resolution number 18-304, authorizing second reading and opening a public hearing for ordinance 18-13.
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Cumming?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. Would anybody like to discuss ordinance 18-13? Seeing no one, do I have a motion to close public hearing for ordinance 18-13?
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Cumming?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. Motion to adopt ordinance number 18-13 at second reading by title. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Before, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, discussion?
I'm sorry. Just a question. This codification, should it, or would we have an expectation that it would highlight the issue raised in ordinance 1811 that we've discussed?
Would it highlight it?
Or did it highlight it?
No, it did not highlight it. It did not highlight it. Just, it was part of the manuscript that they had and originally thought of as part of the existing codification and existing adoption. But then research indicated that it had never been adopted.
Okay.
And that's why it came up as an issue.
Okay. And the second question I have is, not that we did not have a process in place, but do we need to put a process in place to keep this up to date? Should we do this more frequently,
Well-
the codification
Well,
in
yeah,
general?
Well, I think, first of all, the clerk does send every ordinance up to general code, and they put it right into the code. So it's actually going forward, okay? And you know, codifications are living, I mean, codes are living, breathing things. The law changes every day. And some things are, you know, updated, outdated, new ordinance, new statutes, stuff like that. A codification really is kind of a huge, pretty huge re-examination. It's costly. I guarantee you, if you went through the codes of every town in New Jersey, there are going to be provisions in all those codes that are either outdated or could be better.
Okay.
So it just happens, I think we do it every
We do like everywhere.
10 years. Is it 10 years? Supposed to be 10. Yeah, this one took a long time. It took a long time. But
Should,
10 years, I think.
I don't know if any of us will still be here in 10 years, but
No.
would that be, the
He didn't hesitate on that one at all. That was pretty good, Kevin.
would that be the recommended cycle? You know,
I would think so.
to
I would think
revisit
so.
this?
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Can I make one comment, please?
Sure.
Just one other thing is like Mr. Paula said, after the ordinances are adopted, I send them up to general code. I'm going to schedule at least twice, if not 3 times a year, that it will be codified into the code itself. But until that happens, it is under new laws. And if
Sure.
it's under new laws now, you've got a whole litany of, with no explanation, so.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to that going back in, so it's updated.
Understood. Thank you.
I have one question. Ken, if we're keeping current with it, do we really need to do it every 10 years since it's current?
Well,
They check the state laws, the
That's what
cars, that's what it is? Okay.
Well, the state laws, there's cases that overrule things, constitutional issues.
So it has to be reviewed every 10
Yeah,
years?
a lot of things change. 10 years is a pretty significant, time period. But if you decide that it hasn't changed and you don't want to do it, so you're not doing it, but.
Hey, we waited 20 the last time, so.
Yeah.
Anything else, gentlemen?
No.
Roll call?
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Cumming?
Yes.
Councilman Elman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. Introduction, first reading, none tonight. Individual resolutions, none. On the consent agenda, all the following items have been determined to have the unanimous consent of council and will be enacted in one motion. Should any item require independent consideration, any council member may have such item removed from the consent agenda. Resolution number 18-305, authorized contract with Dutra Excavating for backwater valves. Resolution 18-306, authorized agreement with New Jersey Office of Clean Energy for energy efficiency upgrade direct install grant. Resolution 18-307, authorized acceptance of bid and award of contract for the Woodfield Road Improvement Contract, WT-2450. Do I have a motion, or would anybody like something removed?
Can we pull 18305?
Mr. Allman's requested that 305 be pulled. Is everybody okay with proceeding with 306 and 307?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call on 306, 307, Ms. Williams?
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Cumming?
Yes.
Councilman Elman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. Mr. Allman, Resolution 18-305, authorized contract with Dutra Excavating for backwater valves.
So just 2 questions. All of the residents have executed a agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
And 2, we note the funding line is, this was because of the increase due to the having to excavate somewhat further. That line item is sufficient, and do we know what that line item is?
Are you referring to the line item in the budget?
Yes.
Although I don't have the specifics, Matt and the CFO both told me there is enough money to cover it, but they did not mention to me which line item it would be coming from.
Do you know if it's being pulled from current funds, or is it being charged against the capital account?
Again, I want to say it was from current fund money.
Well, it's got a purchase order number of 17, Mr. Allman, so I think it might be being pulled from last year.
Yeah, well, I think the whole project is being pulled from last year. That's
Well,
why
I'm
it
just
was
saying, the
budgeted.
purchase
Yeah,
order number on the
Right.
resolutions is 17 number. My second question, Mr. Mayor, is Mr. Steel still involved in this project? Because it's got him listed as,
He's seeing this one to completion.
okay, thank you.
That's under mutual agreement with him and our current engineer.
Mike, at the bottom of the page, it says account number 70126290650.
Which I guess, I don't even, I would have imagined it would have been a 17 or an 18,
Yeah.
not a 7.
Yeah, this
So
is 7, yeah.
if we're going back to 2007, I mean, again, I don't know if that is a typo or,
It appears to be coming from a 7 account, Mike.
I mean, I would appreciate understanding if it's against current or if we're going against my apologies, a capital project. I don't know if they would have to name the capital project. But, certainly.
I can certainly find out and get back to you within a day or two. I hope you're not thinking of holding this up because the residents have been patiently waiting and we'll start to run into weather issues if we can't finish this out sooner than later.
So I appreciate that the residents are waiting. I also appreciate that I thought we tried to push it along and there was scheduling issues, there were issues where they've changed the agreement multiple times.
Correct.
So there is a give and take on both sides. I'm more than happy to see this through. I think it's, a legitimate question to understand where the funds are coming from.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing.
So, okay. My questions have been answered.
Your question, good. Resolution 18-305, authorized contract with Dutra Excavating for backwater valves. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Well, are we going to find out where it's coming from? Or we're just going to,
Well, I'm going to vote no, because, I don't want to hold it up if everyone else is comfortable, but
because we don't know where it's coming from?
Do you
yes.
think,
I- I don't-
you believe it's 17, Mike, or 7, or we just have no idea if it's coming
We
from
have
capital?
no idea.
Well, it says 7 on the resolution. And that's, it could be I don't think it's a typo because it's just the way it's typed.
Well, if I understand the numbering, if it's a 7, it's
Coming from
07. If it's
2007.
17, it's,
What is the account, 26,290,650? Do we know what that is?
Do you want me to go upstairs and get my budget book?
No,
Find something?
no. I think we should know where it's coming from. like
Let's
everything
pull
else.
it for now, until we find out where the funding's coming
I mean,
from.
we could do, if, during break, if you wanted to go up, Sue, and we could take a look,
Find something.
and we can reintroduce it.
Is everybody okay with that?
Okay.
It would be good to pass it tonight. The people have been waiting.
No. Be nice to know where the money's coming from, all right? You never know.
Always important.
Gentlemen, at this time, adjournment to conference agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion?
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Cummings?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. Gentlemen, at this time, based on information and a difference, a couple of the items on the conference agenda will be stricken and tabled, if it's okay with everybody, as we proceed. But the DMF study under administration is going to be rescheduled, correct, Mrs. Wachowski, for the next meeting?
Well, my question to you as a council would be, would you like them at the next council meeting on October 1st if they're available? Or if you're still planning on doing a strategic planning meeting, would you prefer them to be there?
Gentlemen, what say you?
You mean a strategic planning meeting on a Saturday to figure out?
Either
what
Saturday
we're
or an
doing?
hour before our next council meeting, I was thinking.
I would prefer on a Saturday.
You would prefer Saturday, Mr. Bruno. Okay, let's set up a date for the strategic planning meeting. Gentlemen,
And who'll do the agenda for that?
I will do, me and
I
Sue
mean,
will
I'll
take-
send you comments too, and you put them in.
Yes, we'll put together an agenda.
If you want to check your schedules, I'll send you an email tomorrow to remind you, you can check your schedule, see what you got coming up for
Yep.
Saturday.
Yeah, I'd like to get it done before the October 1st meeting, if we can, the next couple of weeks. Or maybe before the second October meeting, because we have still more time. All right. Item 2, 3, and 4, I'd like to table, if that's okay with everybody?
Well, I am in receipt of an email, and I understand your interest in tabling these. I would like to talk about, in general, closed session and what we do in closed session, how we go into closed session, and what is discussed there. So it doesn't have to be, I had planned to talk about it on item 2. If we're not going to do it as laid out, that's fine, but I do have some comments about closed session or discussion.
That's okay, Mr. Allman, as long, I just would, for the sake of what's going on, if we could just not discuss 2, 3, and 4, because people have not been riced, and we need to do that before we do that.
Understood.
Okay? But you can proceed with your closed session comments.
So, last week, we had a resolution Resolution 18-302 at our last meeting, and there was an exception for item 4, contract negotiations, item 5, property acquisitions, and item 8, personnel. And before we went in, I attempted to get some additional clarification. I think Ken, at one point, said to me, and this goes back quite some time, that if I had been in the audience when we had these votes, I would have certainly stood up and asked what was going on. And I think he is right in that observation from a number of months ago. And I think it's our obligation to be transparent. There are exceptions. There are certainly reasons where we can go into executive or closed sessions. And we covered items over and above what were discussed or what was disclosed in Resolution 18-302. And I think that we as a council and as an administration need to be transparent. And I also think we need to explain why we are going into these sessions more clearly. There has to be my understanding is there has to be the ability to reasonably determine what is being discussed. There certainly are areas where you would not want things like proposed or anticipated litigation. You don't want to show your hand. I understand that. Property acquisitions, potentially. Personnel, we rice people, we have, there's full transparency there. We should be saying who we are discussing or the office we're discussing. If we're talking about existing litigation, if we are litigating, we have a docket number or we have some reference to that litigation, and we should be able to show that. And I really feel that last week, the discussions strayed to areas that certainly were not disclosed as part of Resolution 18302, and I would be hard-pressed, and perhaps I'm being overly critical, but I would be hard-pressed to figure out why they were put into an executive and a closed session. And that would be my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Anybody else on closed session, gentlemen? Moving on, Mr. Bruno, you had asked for the town report card to be put up here?
Yeah, no comment.
No comment on that? Mr. Calamari, you had asked about the teen program?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm Mr. Calamari, I'm thinking
Mayor.
Mr. Cummings, I'm so sorry. My apologies. Wrong PC.
Okay. I think you all received in the packet an email that Gary from Westwood Rec sent to me after we had a meeting about the teen rec program. I know the council, I forget how many of the current members were on it, always talked about removing this $10 fee per family or per child for the children who participate in the teen rec program with Westwood.
Does Westwood charge a fee?
They do not.
Of course not.
So, although it's not part of this discussion, they would like us to pay approximately $1,800 a year for a couple of staff members, to monitor the program for Washington Township share. So that would be the entire cost to the township. And if I had to make a recommendation to the council, I'd like to amend that ordinance.
This would be starting 2019?
No, they'd like to start it immediately.
Do we have the money in the rec?
I believe we do, because we've paid something in the past.
We usually pay like $400, we usually pay, and
Yeah.
then some comes out of the $10 per
Participant.
So we are not
Participant,
going to charge our children of our town residents any longer?
Well, you need to change the fee ordinance, and I hope you can do that, at least introduce it in the next meeting and resolve it at the
What
one
say you
after
on the
that.
subject?
Introduce that.
I think it's a great idea to do it in this way. The problem I always had with that particular setup was that you had to pay in advance,
Yes.
okay, for each child, and sometimes teenagers they don't decide at the last minute they want to go. By that time, it's too late to get them involved.
So would Mr. Sedekich just register these children and they'd be able to go?
They
Is that how
will-
it would work in the future?
Yeah,
We don't charge them $10?
I spoke to our rec director. His suggestion was on our community pass for this activity, we just link them to Westwood's where they would sign up there, no charge, but that way Westwood has at least a record of who might be
And
attending.
the nice thing about that, I think you can do that on the fly if they want it.
Well, once they're registered for the
They're
whole year.
registered.
Right, correct,
Yeah.
yes.
Because you don't have to pay the fee. We're
Right.
not nickel and
Again, you
diming
don't
them
have
at the door.
If this week the kid doesn't want to go, next week he wants to go, you can register anytime before
Yes.
that time.
Or you can
I
just
think that's-
register him January 1st and if he
Whatever.
never goes, he never
So I
goes.
think
Or she
I
never
think
goes.
that's a great idea. It's
Gentlemen,
a great
what-
investment of funds for the youth.
I'm all for it. Mr. Bruno, Mr. Cumming, Mr. Ullman, any comments? You okay with it?
I don't have a problem with it, but I'm just wondering if we'll ever going to see any kind of rec fee reconciliation as to what we pay, what people pay. The same question over and over and over again?
I saw our new rec director this morning.
Yeah.
He is just getting settled in, correct, Mr. Mayor? I mean,
Absolutely, yes.
he's getting settled in, and I have full faith that you will have that report as soon as he is, he's got it started, Mr. Bruno. He's got the template,
Okay.
and I have full faith in him that we'll have it very soon.
Okay.
Is that a fair statement, Mr. Mayor?
It is.
He's been Jiminy Cricket on the
Yes,
spot with the property
And
maintenance
he's the same
issues.
with, and he's gonna be the same with rec, and I think.
Same day answers. It's wonderful.
I
Don't
think,
talk too much about anybody.
Yes.
No, you're right.
Can't talk about anybody, so
No.
we should move on.
Council ordinances and legislation, amending Chapter 183 sanitation
Thank you.
fee schedule. So who's this?
In your packet, you had requested last week what the other towns in the surrounding area are doing for late fees.
For the Board of Health,
And,
right?
yeah, for Board of Health, and coordinated, contact the other towns, and as you can see, most of them do a 50%.
So we just have to revise our ordinance to,
Yeah, if you're in agreement with it, we would like to do that, please.
Do you have any idea what the fee might be? Is it variable?
Yeah.
Depending on the establishment?
It could be as, $50, I know, like, let's say for a food channel, I believe it's $800 for their fee a year. So if they're late, it would be $400, so it's not, a set, because it's not fair for somebody for a $50 or $100 compared to somebody who is even more so.
This thing?
Yeah, I don't have my fee ordinance, I should have brought that. I can send that to you if you'd like, and you can see.
No, that's fine.
we okay with?
Ordell is pretty severe when you're looking at flat fee of 500 no matter.
Yeah, and that's not fair to the little guys.
Don't be late.
Well, that's the point.
Don't be late.
Yeah, I think,
Visa
depends on the
isn't too
behavior
nice to
we
me.
want to encourage.
But I'm never late.
Are we okay
That
with
might-
changing it, gentlemen, to 50% of the annual fee?
Hopefully, we'll never use it.
That would be
That's-
fine for me.
Yeah.
You okay with that? Mr. Cumming?
Yes,
Mr. Bruno, you said yes?
Yep.
Dr. Casio?
Yeah, that seems fair.
Sue, can you proceed with getting us the revision? Mr.
Thank
Pollard?
you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Mr. Pollard, I know it's not on here. How is our zombie house ordinance coming?
The abandoned, yeah, okay, so I've done some research and I picked out a very good ordinance, I think better than what we've seen from before that another town has, so I'll have that for the next meeting.
Can will you send it to us? Can you send it to Mr. Sedekase also?
Yes.
If that's okay with everybody?
And that's for,
Abandoned houses that are derelict and becoming an issue. So this way it gives our property officer some teeth to get it cleaned up very quicker than what's taking now.
What do we do with the red house?
That's our house.
That's our house. We're gonna take it down,
It has another 2 months to go maximum.
right?
Well, I don't know. That's fine.
is it possible, I had raised it once before and didn't follow up, the tree ordinance. I think Mr. Azalina had some thoughts. I don't know if Mr. Sedekis has some thoughts, but, I drive past Jackson Ave, and the soil that's been excavated is, piled up around the, inside the drip line of the remaining trees, and they're just gonna, die in a few years. So if not next week, perhaps we could get that teed up to review.
Yes.
I've spoken with Mr. Azalino, because I know you had that concern, and he needs to come to a meeting he'd like to come to a meeting to present, he'd like to pull in with the planning board, with the plans and zoning, and
Sure.
it's not something he could do on the fly, so I just spoke to him the other day, I think it was on Friday, and I said, tell me what meeting you can be prepared to come to.
Okay.
So I'm noticing it along.
Perfect. And would you, once he gives you an answer, will you let Mike know so we can be scheduled?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Mr. Solomon. We have been corresponding back with Mr. Azalino as far as that, updated everybody on that. Thank you for doing that, sir.
You're welcome.
Miscellaneous, anything else, gentlemen, the miscellaneous? We got trees, we got zombie houses, anything else?
Just
Have we
one
looked at the
item.
trees, I'm sorry, Mike, have we looked at the trees on the Seasons lot lately? They're all collapsing?
Collapsing, Mr. Brown?
Yeah, just falling over.
yeah, there is one.
Look in the lot, they're all
They're all dead
They're
from,
rotten to the core and dead, but
Yeah.
now they're starting to collapse
Put your famous tree ordinance line in there.
onto the property.
Which is, what you be,
We can't help you what to do with trees.
oh. Well, give it to Mr. Sedekis and see if he can do anything.
That's his line.
That's his job.
I will mention it to Mr. Sedekis.
Anything else? Other, we'd like to, Mr. Alderman, you had something, I believe?
just back in at the August 3rd meeting, I had asked about an expense, and then again at the last meeting in September. There's about $839 of miscellaneous truck parts that it's not clear if they were going on new trucks. If they are, they're being charged against a ordinance from 15. And I know Matt had indicated he was going to get back to me. I haven't heard. And, I think it's not the $839 that I'm really concerned about. It's the fact that we're potentially going to capitalize this. We're talking about permanent bonding, so a 50 amp switch will be paid for the next 20-something years, which concerns me because I don't think we should be capitalizing some miscellaneous expenses. So if we could get an answer, that would be great.
I'll remind him tomorrow.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, one last thing. Has anybody shed any light on our firehouse proposal? I know I was accused of rushing it through. I've given it another month to sit. Has anybody had any feelings, or I would like to just find out, do we take the next step and ask Mr. Conley to prepare a proposal for a new firehouse for us, so we have it for our budgetary meetings, so we can budget it?
Well, I spoke to him late this morning, early this afternoon, to ask him about the next phase, because I was a little unclear on it. What he says the next phase is we have to fund the professional fees that was quoted in all of his quotes to take it to the next step. So we don't fund the firehouse.
Yes, correct. But
Correct.
I'd like a
Yeah.
professional proposal from him.
He also told me this morning he'll have one to us by the latest, not this coming Wednesday, a week from this coming Wednesday at the latest, that will outline what's to be done and the fee structure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
So, Mike, all I would say to that is, I think the discussion around the strategic plan and what we heard this evening is we have to do a new DMF building. We can excavate around it, we can do a lot of work around it. That's going to increase the cost, and it's still going to leave us with a building that is in a great deal of disrepair. So we have a DMF building that needs to be replaced, whether on-site or at another site. We have a proposal to replace a firehouse, to mix use it with the ambulance. There are other capital items that were discussed and in our capital plan, things like the two fire trucks, some other DMF trucks, the
Intersection.
the this, the that. So, I think it's great that we have a number out there. Is that going to happen? I don't know. And I would not commit to it at the moment.
Okay.
I think, we're looking at, I think the number I quoted last time based on some numbers from the mayor, as well as the numbers in our capital plan of 20-something million. It's not clear to me or 22 million, how we would fund that. And the thought of capitalizing these bonds, the bands, that we've been pushing along with full knowledge. Everyone has been pushing it along, but the thought of now capitalizing them and pushing them out for 20 years, or funding them for 20 years, doesn't make sense to me.
I agree with your $22 million number, and unfortunately, we're inheriting $6 million in pass-through, on top of the $187,000 we got when I first got put on this dais, and the new $250,000. And I agree with you. Passing $6 million into a 30-year, 20-year note is unfathomable in any world. It's like almost being done paying off your mortgage and figuring out that you got another 20 years at 70 years old to pay for something that should have been paid for years ago.
No, but, if...
I think the strategic plan is the way to go, and then...
It is, and I think that we need not only our thought process, but, the CFO or the acting CFO, or, can we split this? Can we capitalize the bands and convert them into a 10-year note and capitalize the buildings into a 30-year note? I don't know if we can split that.
Mr. Beinfeld said we could.
But what's the impact of that? I mean, it sounds great. Interest rates, again, are not going down. They're only going up, and I think it behooves us, to get this figured out.
Appreciate that, Mr. Holmes.
All right.
Mr. Cummings?
I want to go ahead with the firehouse, and I want to commend our police and our ambulance corps. Tremendously skilled people devoted to our township and local dispatch. They came to a call in Northgate. Person survived.
That's great.
It's wonderful. Thank you.
Mr. Bruno?
Yeah, I guess my understanding was on our last meeting that we were going to, I had said obviously we need something there, but then there were priorities in terms of what comes first and second, and it's when we said we were sit down with a strategic planning meeting. So, like to Mike's point, we have to throw everything on the table and say, prioritize, and let's do that. Certain things get done, certain things don't get done, and if we want things down the road, then, we look at them. But I think it's important to have the planning.
All right, so let's, Sue will send out the email tomorrow to see what dates are available to meet on a Saturday morning and get this done. Dr. Cassia?
No, you really can't do anything without a strategic plan. We have a deadline now with DEP coming up in 3 years. I think that's the only deadline we really have on anything at this point. And I can't see saving that building. It really doesn't pay. Trying to save it would probably cost you more than building a new one. So there's a priority. Now we have a priority. There has to be, there's a due date to get it done. These things take time. Looking at some other projects, I think we have to put those to the back burner. We can't do everything at once. Unfortunately, the strategic plan is going to be our first order of business before we go any further with any of these projects. So I look forward to that date to do that.
Thank you.
Mike, may I just make a quick comment also about?
Sure.
Obviously, the strategic plan needs to be done. I slightly disagree with you, Dr. Cassio, on we do have a firm deadline for the Quest and the DEP. Although not firm, we have to make up, just like we did for this with previous administrations, that money wasn't spent on the firehouse and the DMF. And although they're not hard deadlines based on any government regulation, both buildings are long past their useful life, and so I just ask that we keep that in mind as part of the plan.
Absolutely, Mr.
So is the intersection. It's
Yes.
40, it's 40
Right,
years
right.
overdue. So
Yeah.
what's going to affect the townspeople the most if it doesn't get done right away, physically and in the pocketbook as well. So those are two considerations we have to, consider.
Yep.
Okay.
Mike, may I ask one question?
Sure, Mr. Bruno.
I know I missed a few meetings, but did we decide to do away with the project tracker?
We did not do away with the project tracker.
Okay.
Yeah.
We pretty much discussed,
And I haven't seen it, so I didn't know.
your,
I'll have Mac bring it up to date for the next meeting.
thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, resolution number 18-308, closed session meeting to discuss litigation and rights notices. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So is it out there?
What's that?
Is the resolution on the table?
It is, but it was blank because I did not know if we were going into closed session, so it will be typed up and filled out. But it's out there for the public, and my counsel wants to read, and I have one to mark up.
So what are the reasons we're going in?
To discuss items 2, 3, and 4 on the conference agenda.
So item 3, I guess this goes to my comments. It's well, it says it here, it's an invoice for past due fees.
I just want
What-
to, I just want to warn people, not, I hate to say this, but the more we get this into discussion about what it is, the closer that you might get to a problem. I think you're wrong about saying it's to discuss 2, 3, and 4. Respectfully, I think it's anticipated litigation, which is an overriding category, which would
Okay.
cover what I believe would be the issues that are raised.
Okay.
Okay, that's from my point of view, which is a absolute permitted item from the
Okay.
Open Public Meetings Act. And so I agree with Mike, Mr. Ullman, that, to start talking about specific items, you're going to run into that it's not supposed to be enclosed per se, to discuss enclosed. So I think if you're going to go into...
So we're going to go into the
Anticipated
vagueness. I
litigation.
think Mr. Ullman's first thing about closed session was he didn't like the vagueness about it. And then we moved to the,
No, well, anticipated litigation, I think he said he was okay with. Mike, is that true, Mr.
Yeah,
Ullman?
because if, again, anticipated litigation, if you explain what you're anticipating, it will give your potential litigants an insight into it. I believe that
Okay.
there's, not that I'm a lawyer, but there's case law supporting that.
Yes.
we'll leave it that. Okay.
Yeah.
So do I have a motion to go into resolution number 18-308 for anticipated litigation?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilman Bruno,
Yes.
Councilman Casio,
Yes.
Councilman Cumming,
Yes.
Councilman Ullman,
Yes.
Council President DeSena.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure also, before we go in, that we're not talking about personnel, because personnel requires...
We did not rights notice
We
anything.
didn't
No.
rights notice anybody, so I just want to have that on the record, that we're not going to be talking about personnel.
I just wanted to discuss the need, when I said rights notices, the
Right,
need for us to have a rights
rights.
notice issue.
That's fine.
That's what I meant. I did not. Gentlemen, we take a 5-minute break before we go into close?
Sure.
Mr. Clement, you okay with that?
Thank you.